I sat there in shock at what I saw. The camera angle was a little weird. It was apparently placed on a flat surface that was in direct view of the bed and tilted slightly to the right, but the contents greatly obscured the position and angles of the recording device. The question is, how did this end up with my other tapes? The unlabeled cassette was supposed to contain a program that I had recorded last week for later viewing. I sat down expecting to be entertained and instead got the biggest surprise of my life. It was Monday evening, and at 6:15, the doorbell rang. I opened it and found my cousin Ralph there. I thought this was a little strange because I usually don't get home until after midnight, but then I thought that Ralph had probably forgotten about my schedule. I invited him in, bought him a beer, and then we sat and talked while watching Monday Night Football. He seemed disappointed that my wife Lois wasn't home, but she called me around 5 and said she was going to come over after work for a drink or two with some of her coworkers. She also told me that she would be ready for something when she returned home. I was more than ready. It had been a little over 3 weeks since Lois and I last made love. Lois seemed to be going through a period of despondency. It was nothing more than, "I'm too tired," or "I have a headache," or "I had a bad day at work and my legs and back are killing me." After a while, Ralph said he had to go, and I walked him to the door and said goodbye. I looked at my watch and saw that it was only 8, so I grabbed another beer and settled back in front of the TV. Later that evening, I woke up in a deep chair. The beer I drank relaxed me so much that I dozed off, which I usually don't do. I stood up and noticed that the Yukon was parked in the driveway, so Lois must have returned home, and I wondered why she didn't wake me up so we could get into bed and get on with it, as they say. I smiled and headed to the bedroom, anticipating the sex Lois told me I should look forward to. She was in bed, and I, undressed, pressed myself against her from behind, and then reached out and cupped her breast, and she snorted softly and began to snore lightly. Damn, I thought. She's sleeping. I thought that maybe I could excite her enough for her to wake up. So I started playing with her breasts. After a while, I felt her pressing her ass against me again, and I began to slowly rub against her. At 44, Lois was in much better shape than girls half her age. Her ass was round and firm, and her tummy was toned. Her breasts were a size C and only slightly sagging. I noticed that when we went out in public together, Lois attracted a lot of male attention, and at times I was still surprised that Lois didn't leave me for someone richer, prettier, with more dignity between her legs, or all of the above. The size of my assets between my legs was the only real insecurity I had in our marriage, and it started back when Lois and I first made love. This was on our 10th date. We had been kissing passionately since our 3rd date, and with each date it got harder and harder. At the end of the 10th date, she asked me to come over after I drove her home and left me on the couch while she left the room to put on the coffee. She came back a couple of minutes later and was completely naked. She smiled and said, "Coffee, tea, or me?" I got up and undressed. When I was naked, she looked below the waist and said, "I think this will do." She turned and headed into the bedroom, and as I watched her leave, I thought to myself, "I think this will do." That and the tone of her voice made me think she wasn't too impressed, although I didn't expect her to say something like, "Oh God, I don't know if I can stand this." I figured I was average. The average length, in my opinion, was 15 to 18 centimeters, and I was 16 centimeters, so I thought I fell in that range. Neither Lois nor I were virgins by any means. We had both been there and done that, and I knew several of her ex-boyfriends. I had seen a couple of them in the showers and locker room, and they were about the same length as me, so I was wondering what prompted her comment. When we got to her bedroom, she pushed me onto the bed and then leaned over and got to work. After a minute or two, she pulled away from me and said, "This is the perfect size for this activity." The way she said it and the tone in which it was said, "It's okay, it'll do." She lay down on the bed, and I returned the favor. I did it well enough to satisfy her, and then we moved on to sex. She felt liberated, and I never reached bottom with her, as with past lovers. I was wise enough not to question this looseness, and simply made love to her. We repeated this 2 more times before calling it a day. On the way home, I thought about her looseness and her remark, "I think this will do," and it bothered me. Let's face it, no man wants to think that he is not enough for his lady, but that's what I was thinking. After we started doing it, and had been doing it for a couple of weeks, Lois asked me if I thought she was being too promiscuous. I had no idea what prompted the question, and I actually thought it was strange that she asked it, but I wasn't stupid, so I lied and said, "Of course not. I guess I'm just a little too small for you." "You're not little at all, baby. You're just perfect for me." She was lying, and I knew it. From the guy's point of view, this was a wrong statement. Be honest and admit that he's a little small for you, or sidestep it and say that he's bigger than any other lover you might have had, but don't be obvious about trying to spare his feelings. I was in love with Lois, and when I finally offered her my size, it didn't seem to be a problem for her, and she accepted. Even though she married me, "I think this will do" never left my mind. Anyway, back to my attempts to wake up a sleeping Lois to try and get some love. While I was hoping that she would start thrusting back, she must have woken up or was starting to wake up, and she moaned and then reached back and took me between my legs and then released it like it was a hot stone, saying, "Oh, it's you." My frustration at her sleeping in bed after promising me sex instantly turned to white-hot anger. I've had enough of her crap. Just damn it. Who did you think he was? You pathetic fucking bitch. What the fuck is with this, "Oh, it's just you" crap? Who the hell have you been sleeping with behind my back? I got out of bed, picked up my shorts from the floor, and went downstairs. I grabbed a beer and then went out onto the veranda and sat down to cool down a bit, thinking about what had just happened. She rubbed her ass against me and pulled back as if she wanted him and then let go as if he was red hot. As I sat and looked at the moon and stars, I wondered for the first time in our married life whether her evenings with the girls were really spent with the girls. Now I seriously doubted it. Shit. Was anything she did when she was away from me really what she said she was doing? My next thought was, where the hell can I scrape together enough money to hire a detective and find out what this bitch did in her free time? Something else occurred to me. This bitch knew exactly what I was thinking from the way I yelled at her, and she didn't care what I thought. So much so that she trudged downstairs, gave me her usual excuses, and tried to make things work. It was almost like, well, now he knows. So what the hell, okay? I didn't want to go back upstairs, and now I was completely awake, so I decided to go back inside and watch TV. Last week I had a tape of NCIS, so I dug through the tapes until I found it, then put it in the VCR. The video explained it all. I paused it and quietly went back upstairs to see if Lois was still in bed, and when I looked in, she was quietly snoring. I went back downstairs and resumed playing the tape. I watched as my wife and my cousin Ralph walked into the bedroom, hugged each other, and kissed passionately. From the camera angle, I guessed that it was placed on the top shelf of the wardrobe. I could see most of the room, and it was obvious to me that the two of them had done this before. Ralph carried Lois onto the bed, and then they undressed each other. When Lois pulled down his boxers, my jaw nearly hit the floor. Ralph had the biggest assets between his legs that I'd ever seen. It must have been 25 to 30 centimeters and almost as big as my wrist. He practically ripped Lois's panties off, exposing her, and then pushed her back onto the bed. Ralph stood up and said, "How bad do you want to get fucked, bitch?" "I need it, baby. Hurry up and take me." "Come on, you cheating bitch. Tell me how bad you want it." "Oh, God, please. Please hurry up." He looked at the camera, winked, and then wiggled his eyebrows as if it was supposed to be funny. How could she do this to me? I thought, and how many times and with how many men? I was hurt and furious, but I couldn't stop watching. I still couldn't get over how big it was and how easily she was able to take it. Getting more comfortable, she moaned, "Oh my God, you're much bigger than Dave." Then he said, "I bet Dave doesn't have you that good, does he?" Again, it was more of a statement than a question, and Lois replied, "Hell no." It was painful. Size has always been an issue for me since I was with Lois, but that bitch always assured me that it wasn't an issue, but I guess the truth will come out sooner or later. I was looking at a man I probably didn't really know. I know for sure that she never had sex with me the way she did with him. Two thoughts occurred to me almost simultaneously. What have I done to deserve this? And all these years I've been worrying about size for no reason. I couldn't even begin to compare this to what Lois seemed to be used to. I wasn't too small for her. This little place of hers was too damn big for a normal, average-size man. Oh my God! I heard something behind me, turned around, and saw Lois standing there. Oh God, oh God, oh God! She moaned, running to the phone and quickly dialing the number, repeating in a sing-song voice, "Answer, damn it, answer! Answer the fucking phone!" Then, "Damn it, Ralph, Dave knows. He got hold of that stupid tape you just had to record. I do not know how. You should have taken the damn thing with you when you left. You couldn't take it. Dave is sitting here watching this right now. I think I knew where my NCIS tape was." I stood up and walked over to Lois, but she flinched and backed away from me. She probably thought I was going to hit her, but what I did was snatch the phone out of her hands. "Why don't you come and pick up the tape, Ralph? Just remember to wear your bulletproof vest when you arrive. It would be extremely wise of you to never again allow yourself to be anywhere near a place where I might end up. Keep in mind that from now on, I intend to attend every family event, just hoping and praying that you will be there too. I won't waste my time looking for you, but rest assured that one day I will come across you, and when that day comes, it will be the worst day of your worthless life." I hung up the phone, looked at Lois, and said, "Thanks to you and my stupid cousin, I don't have to spend money on a private investigator. You two have provided me with all the evidence I need." I went back to the VCR, took out the tape and kissed it, then put it on the TV. Lois asked in a trembling voice, "What are you gonna do?" "What the fuck do you think I'm gonna do? I'm going to divorce your stinking ass." "But I don't want a divorce." "Why the hell not? From what I just looked at, it's obvious that you don't give a shit about me. You should be thrilled to death that you're getting rid of a man who doesn't meet your needs. Go pack your bag and get the hell out of here before I actually lose my temper, and do what I'm quickly beginning to believe to you. You fully deserve it." She almost ran out of the room, and as soon as she was gone, I grabbed the blank tape and put it on the TV, and then I took the recorded tape into the kitchen and hid it. I made some coffee, sat down at the kitchen table, and started making a list of what I needed to do in the morning. We didn't live in a state that didn't have fault rules, but what I did know was that courts generally divided assets equally unless the cause was adultery or criminal in nature. Adultery has been an issue for me ever since I got the tape. The house was left to me by my parents, and I was going to add the name Lois to the property, but thank God, I never got around to doing it. While I was working on my list, I heard Lois come down the stairs, and a couple of minutes later, I heard the front door open and close. I wondered where she could have gone at 2 in the morning, but then I stopped caring at all. I truly wondered how one could go from loving to hating in a matter of seconds or minutes. Yesterday, I would have been willing to die for this woman, but now I wouldn't pee on her to try to put out the fire if she was on fire. I looked through the list, and there were some things I could do right away thanks to the internet. I stood up and headed into the office, and as I walked through the living room, I noticed that the empty tape I had placed on the TV was gone, and I smiled. I just hoped she assumed she had the damn tape and didn't watch it to make sure. If things had worked out the way I expected, I might have been able to break up with her and her ass. Once in the office, I sat down at the computer and launched internet banking. I transferred all but $10 from our joint account to a savings account that was in my name only. I had this account when I married Lois, and she had her own, and we never got around to merging them. Then I got into credit cards. I paid my bills online, so I logged in and canceled the joint accounts. I only had American Express and Visa in my name, and I left those two alone. I would call in the morning and make sure the accounts are closed. Satisfied that I had done everything I could to protect myself, I went to bed and, surprisingly, slept soundly. The alarm woke me up at 7, and at 7:45 I was dressed and left the house. After breakfast at Trikaki's, I headed to the bank so I could be there at 9 when the doors opened. I called work from a restaurant and told my secretary that I would be late, and she told me that my wife called me and wanted me to call her. There's little chance of that, I thought, hanging up. When the bank opened, I rented a safe deposit box in my name only, and then transferred everything from the safe deposit box that Lois had access to into my new safe deposit box. That done, I headed to the office where Myra, my secretary, handed me some slips of messages and told me that Lois was still trying to contact me. I told Myra that Lois and I were getting a divorce and asked her not to bother receiving any messages from her. Then Myra told me that Alan wanted to see me as soon as I got to work. I went to the boss's office and Shirley, his personal assistant, told me to come right in. "You chose the wrong time to be late," he told me as I walked through the door. "I need you on the next flight to Atlanta. The Morgans are refusing to sign a new contract and I need you to go there and talk them into it." I told him that now was not the right time for me to leave and explained to him why. "One of the things I need to do is get a restraining order to keep Lois away from me and the house, and I need to change the locks. If I don't finish this, she might clean the place out while I'm gone. Give me your keys, and I'll do everything." You can use Bert Ellsworth. He was my lawyer when I was going through a divorce, and he did a hell of a job for me. I'll call him and tell him to wait for your call. Call him on the way to the airport. Shirley has reserved a seat for you, and you can pick up your ticket at the Delta counter. I couldn't say no. It was a great job, and it paid very well, so I had to go to Atlanta whether I wanted to or not. I hurried home, packed my bag, and made sure my answering machine was on, then headed to the airport. On the way, I called the number for the lawyer Alan had given me and asked for Ellsworth. When I told the secretary my name, she immediately connected me. I explained the situation to him and told him what I wanted to do. He gave me some advice and I gave him my visa number to pay for his services. At the airport, I encountered the usual TSA nonsense, got to the Delta counter, checked in, and then sat in the boarding area and waited for my flight to be announced. As I sat there, I thought about what the lawyer had told me. I lied and told Ellsworth that the reason I needed the restraining order was because I overheard Ralph telling Lois that if I caused her any distress by finding out they were having sex, then he'll make me come to my senses. I will beat this little weakling until he comes to his senses. That's what I told Ellsworth. And then I said I heard Lois say, "Oh, well done. Can I take a look and maybe kick him below the belt once or twice?" Of course, it was all a lie, and I wouldn't speak at a hearing on the show, but if it kept Lois away from the house until I got back, I'd lie as hard as I could. I earned this right by listening to all the lies she told me, cheating with Ralph, and only God and Lois knew how many others. Ellsworth said there would be no problem getting a restraining order, but there would be a hearing in 10 days where I would have to convince the judge to make the order permanent. The trip to Atlanta was helpful, in the sense that I solved the problem within an hour of meeting the Morgans and called Alan, and told him we had a contract signed. He told me that he had called a locksmith and that the locks on the house had been changed. In addition to that, my brother-in-law is a deputy sheriff and he'll look after this place until you get back. While I was in Atlanta, I paid a courtesy call to 2 other clients before catching the 7:20 flight home. While waiting for my flight to be announced, I remembered that I had turned off my cell phone during courtesy calls and had not turned it on again. When I did this, I discovered that I had 6 missed messages and 3 voicemails. 1 message and 1 voicemail were from Ellsworth, and all the others were from Lois. I deleted her messages and listened to her voicemail. They were both the same. "Call me. We need to talk before things get out of control." A voicemail from Ellsworth informed me that he was able to make it to court that afternoon and was granted an order of protection. He arranged for it to be served to Lois at her workplace the next morning. I have to thank Alan for recommending Ellsworth. I returned home at midnight, and, as I got out of the car, a man got out of a car parked on the side of the road and approached me. He introduced himself as a deputy sheriff and asked me for some identification. "You must be Alan's brother-in-law," I said, taking out my wallet and showing him my driver's license, then thanking him for looking after the house. He handed me a keychain with a pair of keys and said, Brian told me to tell you that all the locks in the house are locked with the same keys, so you only need one key to open all the locked doors. Your wife appeared here at 5:30 and again at 9. She got really angry when I didn't let her in. She threatened to call the police on me if I didn't let her into the house. She was a little surprised when I showed her my badge and told her the cops were already here. Once home, I noticed the answering machine light was blinking, but I was exhausted, so I turned off the phone and went to bed. This morning, after I showered, shaved, and got dressed, I listened to the messages on my answering machine, and surprise, surprise, they were all from Lois, and the contents were basically the same. Call me before you do anything rash. It's too late, honey, I thought. Too late. When I got to work, Myra told me that Lois called again, and Myra told her that she was told not to connect Lois, and that she wasn't even supposed to record messages from Lois. She hasn't called since then. I leaned over, kissed Myra on the forehead, and said, I don't know what I would do without you. She laughed and said, I bet you say that to all the girls. I walked into Alan's office and filled him in on the Morgan situation, then thanked him for taking care of the lock problem at my house and sending me to Ellsworth. What's next for you? He asked. I continue to live my life. I will try to find a good woman who will tolerate me. You can handle it. The first couple of months will be difficult, but over time everything will get better. I went to my office and got down to business. At 9, I called Ellsworth, and he told me the papers would be filed by 10, and he could file Lois before lunch if I wanted. I told him to go ahead and do it. At 10 minutes to noon, Myra poked her head into my office and invited me to go to lunch with her. I needed a break, so I agreed. We walked into the cafe and took a table, and after Mandy took our order, Myra asked, How you doing? I'm fine. Why do you ask? Both my older brother and sister are divorced, and I know how hard it can be when you first start going through the process. I know that having someone who is not involved that you can talk to can help ease the situation. Are you applying for this job? Someone needs to cheer you up, so who better than me? Cheer? Yeah, I think this is something I could really use right now. Myra reached into her purse, took out a piece of paper and handed it to me, saying, Today's attempt to cheer you up. I looked at the paper and saw that it was a list of names. What is this? A list of girls who are interested in you now that you are returning to the bachelor market. I looked through the list and saw a couple of surprises. Liz Fisher, the stunningly beautiful red-haired girl from accounting. I thought she was engaged. Last I heard, the wedding is next month. She caught him cheating and gave him a kick. And you think she's interested in me? I know it is so. She once said that she would have you in a heartbeat if you were single. I looked at the list again. There were 7 names on the list, and besides Mary, there were 2 more that might interest me. Are you saying you know they are all interested? I heard that each of them showed interest in you once or twice. I smiled and said, I noticed that your name is not on the list. I thought about enrolling him there, but decided that under the circumstances it would be better for me not to do so. Why didn't you do this? Besides the obvious fact that I'm married and you know it? Certainly. You just admitted that you've been thinking about it. The answer is that you are just beginning to experience a divorce caused by your wife's infidelity. I thought that under the circumstances, dating a married woman who cheated would be the last thing on your mind. Are you cheating? I thought you and Harold were fine. We were together until I found out that he was cheating with his secretary in his office. Instead of getting a divorce, I decided to maintain my comfortable lifestyle and pay him back in kind. Well, you're wrong about one thing. Knowing that you're married and cheating wouldn't stop me. You should have put your name on the list. You would be the perfect woman for me right now. Now I know you're joking. I am far from being an ideal woman. That's where you're wrong. There are 3 names on your list that interest me, but you have one thing that they don't have. And what, pray tell, could it be? You are married, but they are not. Now this is something you just have to explain. Right now, emotional confusion is the last thing I need. It would be too easy to become emotionally invested in the 3 on your list that would interest me. On the other hand, people have already spoken for you, and, by your own admission, you are happy to cheat on your hubby an eye for an eye. If I contacted you, there would be no emotional component. What we'd be is hookup buddies. Are you serious? Do you really mean it? Of course, seriously. Don't get me wrong, honey. I am not the kind of man who would ever pursue a married woman and try to seduce her. But the one who let me know she was available? In the blink of an eye, honey. In the blink of an eye with a bare ass. Then what would you say about a long lunch? I would be all for it. Do we have time today? Not today. I have a meeting with people from Hayes at 2, but I have a clear schedule for tomorrow. This is a date. Was I a hypocrite for having sex with another woman while still married to Lois, and considering that I was kicking her out for cheating on me? Not in my imagination. According to Ellsworth, Lois was to be served by the time I had lunch with Myra, and once Lois had her divorce papers in hand, it was my understanding that we would be officially divorced and I would be free to do whatever I wanted. At 2:45, my cell phone rang. I looked at the screen and saw that it was Lois, and knowing that it was probably because she had been notified, I decided to answer the call. What do you want? No, hello, just, what do you want? I was tempted to say, what the fuck do you want, bitch? But I decided that she already knew how I felt about her. Why can't I get into the house and what the hell is going on with this divorce garbage? And why aren't my credit cards working? And the order of protection? Are you crazy? No, I just left the marriage. Your cards aren't working because one of the things you do when you get rid of a cheating wife is cancel her credit cards. And the reason you can't get into the house is because you don't live there anymore. And I don't want you there. You need to stop this nonsense, Dave. You can't seriously want to lose half of everything you have because I have a little fun on the side. That's all it was, Dave. Just some fun sex. There was no love here. You are the only one I love. I don't think so, Lois. From what I understand, you are a cheating bitch, and that is why I filed the complaint citing adultery as the reason. We need to talk. We need to sit down face to face and talk about this, Dave. I think I surprised her when I said, okay. Where and when? Home at 10 today? I don't think so. I kicked you out of the house and won't let you back in again. You can't keep me out of the house, Dave. Of course I can. I'm the owner of the house, Lois. You're not on the list. My parents left the house to me, not to you and me. I'll let you in to get the rest of your things, but only after my lawyer makes sure there's someone from the court there to make sure you don't take anything you're not entitled to. Why don't we forget about all this legal stuff and just sit down and figure it all out? I said I'm ready to talk to you, just not at home. You're being completely unreasonable, Dave. If not in the house, then where? Tomorrow evening at Angelina's at 6. We can take a booth in the back, which should give us plenty of privacy. I closed the phone to end the conversation, wondering if Lois really thought I was stupid enough to fall for the "it was just sex with him, I only love you" bullshit. Even when this thought flashed through my mind, I already knew that the answer would be in the affirmative. And why shouldn't she think I'm a fool? I was stupid enough to let her get away with something she did for years. That evening, coming home from work, I went to the bar on the runway for a drink or two to drown out my sorrows. Also, since it was Wednesday, it was an open night, and I thought maybe one or two comedians could make me laugh and cheer me up. I sat down at the counter and Karen saw me, came over and asked, "As usual, Dave?" "I don't know, honey. My usual order's beer and a date with you, and so far, all I've gotten is beer. I keep telling you, Dave, I have a goalkeeper and I'm going to stay with him. Then, probably, just beer." As she went to get the beer, I watched her ass jiggle and wondered if her owner appreciated what he had. A fiery redhead, 165 centimeters tall, with breasts to die for if her low-cut blouses don't lie. I'd been flirting with her for years, knowing that harmless flirting was all it was, but now that Lois was out of the picture, I really wouldn't mind getting serious with Karen. But then this goalie thing came along. Well, on the raised stage, a woman was trying to become a stand-up comedian. A surveyor stops by Will's farm in eastern Minnesota and says he has bad news. I discovered that your farm is not in Minnesota. It's actually in Wisconsin. Will let out a huge sigh of relief and said, "This is the best news I've had in a long time. I was just telling my wife this morning that I don't think I can survive another winter in Minnesota." The crowd laughed heartily at her, and she continued. The New York City Department of Education reports that only 26% of city students in grades 3 through 8 pass the English portion of a recent standardized test. But on the other hand, they are too bad at math to understand how bad it is. This time she received a polite chuckle, but moved on to the next outlier. The new pastor visited the homes of his parishioners. In one house, it seemed obvious that someone was home, but there was no answer to his repeated knocks. He took out a card, wrote Revelation 3:20 on the back, and stuck it on the door. When the offer was processed the following Sunday, he discovered that his card had been returned. Genesis 3:10 was added to it. Reaching for his Bible, he glanced at the quote and burst into a burst of laughter. Revelation 3:20 begins with the words, "Behold, I stand at the door and knock." Genesis 3:10 says, "I heard your voice in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked." Two more good comedians came out after her, and I left the place feeling much better than when I entered. Perhaps there was some truth to the old saying that laughter is the best medicine. The next day at work, before I even sat down at my desk, Myra reminded me that we had a lunch date. The morning turned out to be quite busy, and at 11:30, Myra and I went for lunch. As we drove to the Marriott, I asked her if she really wanted to have lunch first. She laughed and said, "Sex on a full stomach slows me down a little, and I don't want any slowness my first time with you." I registered us as Mr. and Mrs. Ralph Tomlinson. I thought it was fitting that I use Lois's lover's name to get my first piece of ass from another woman. Once in the room, Myra immediately began to undress, and she managed to undress much faster than me, but then she had a head start. She entered the room without panties or bra and kept her high heels and thigh-high nylon stockings on. The sight of the secretary standing there caused the stone statue to get excited, but I didn't, but only because I got mine in the elevator on the way to the floor where our room was located. "Oh, that's great," Myra said, looking at my excitement. Imagine what that did to me after I heard what Lois said, because of which I carried this uncertainty within myself for years. Myra lay on her back on the bed, spread her legs, and said, "Come and take me, my love." I joined her on the bed and moved to lie on top of her, but she said, "Nothing like that, lover. Maybe later, but I've been hot and wet since we made this date yesterday. Take me first and then we can do other things." I wasn't going to argue. When we finished having sex, she turned and said, "Now we can do something else." And she reached down and got to work. We parted, and as much as I wanted to lie down next to her and hug her a little, I couldn't. A long lunch was something we could get away with, but not an afternoon rest. I got up, quickly went to the bathroom, and started getting dressed. "You can stay a little longer and take a shower or clean yourself up," I said, "but I need to get back to work." "Don't be stupid," Myra said. "Why should I wash you off of me? Going to hubby while still smelling my lover's scent on me is one part of my revenge against him." The rest of the day went by quickly, and then it was time for me to head to Angelina's to meet Lois. I got there first and took a booth at the back of the hall. I wanted this spot because it was the farthest from the dance floor and therefore the quietest. I ordered my usual dish and settled down to wait for Lois. Lois came in 5 minutes later and looked sexy as usual when she came out. She had clearly dressed in a way to arouse me, in the hopes that it would make me more amenable. Normally, seeing her like this would instantly lift my spirits, but realizing what she had done to me and my marriage killed that desire. She sat down, and when the waitress came and asked Lois what she wanted to drink, Lois ordered her usual Cosmo and had a very angry look on her face as I told the waitress, "Separate checks, please." I took a sip of my beer and then said, "Okay, Lois, you called this meeting, so speak your mind." "Honestly, Dave, You could be a little more polite. Given the circumstances, Lois, you're lucky I'm not trying to wrap my hands around your throat and strangle your lying ass. I'm sitting here looking at your throat and imagining how good it would be to wrap both hands around it and squeeze it tightly. You wanted to talk, so get to it, or I'll get up and leave. She sighed and said, "You're overreacting to things, Dave. We don't need to get a divorce. I love you, and always have loved you, and always will love you. The Ralph story means nothing to me. Yes, I had sex with him, but that's all it was. Just sex. Most of the time I don't even like it, but it satisfies my need. He was never a threat to you or our marriage. If he means nothing to you, why did you neglect me to take care of him? I've never done this." "Of course I did. Just think back to the last 6 months. How often have you provided me? Most of the time reluctantly, I might add, with your sexual favors. Crap. Just remember the events of the last 3 weeks. I listened to your excuses night after night and made do without them, while all this time, you slept with someone else. Is this what you call loving me and only me? Not much time has passed. I'm damn sure that's true. For 3 weeks you've been avoiding me, and when you finally tell me that I'll be lucky when you come home, you immediately go to bed and fall asleep. Whenever I tried to do something, you were all for it, until you realized it was me. Remember this, Lois. Do you remember that, 'Oh, it's you, I'm tired, leave me alone'? That says it all, Lois. That, 'Oh, it's just you,' said it all. Then watching this tape was the final nail in the coffin. This pathetic semblance, cannot satisfy my needs, was the hammer that drove in the final nail. Come on, Dave. You know that what I said was not true. Then why are you even telling Ralph all this? Because Ralph likes to hear it. He has some kind of burning need to hear that he is much better than you. I say such nonsense to stroke his ego. There's absolutely nothing wrong with you as a lover, Dave. You always gave me pleasure. Then why do you sleep with other men? It's not other men, Dave. It's just Ralph. So you don't think it's cheating on me since it's just Ralph? That's not what I said. It doesn't matter, Lois. 1 man or 100. Having sex with a man who is not your husband is cheating, no matter how you look at it. Answer this question for me, Dave. Until you saw this post, didn't you say we had a good marriage? Maybe good, but certainly not great. Well, I dated Ralph before we got married, and it didn't affect our marriage at all. You slept with my asshole cousin before we even agreed? Yes, I slept with him. Then why the hell did you even bother marrying me? Because I love you, Dave. I barely even like Ralph. Then why the hell are you sleeping with him? Because he gives me something physically inaccessible to you. Sighs Dave. All Ralph has is size. He penetrates those places inside of me where you cannot penetrate. These places give me feelings that you can't give me. Why don't you look at it like Ralph is just helping you with me? You must be completely out of your mind if you think you can convince me of this. If that's all you wanted to talk about, then we're done here. I started to get up and she said, "You'll never be able to prove adultery, Dave. You don't have any evidence to support this. You're forgetting that I have the tape that you and Ralph so kindly made for me." "You are sure?" "Of course, I'm sure," I said, and walked away from her. I smiled as I walked out the door. Apparently, she hadn't watched the tape she took from home, so she didn't know she had a blank one. I was just reaching for the car door handle when I heard the click-click of high heels coming my way, and I turned around to see Lois half walking, half running in her high heels. I was amazed that she could move so quickly in them. She hurried to me and said, "I need to get into the house, Dave. I need my clothes and stuff." I knew when I said this that I was being an asshole, but I honestly felt like I had the right to be one when I said, "Have your lawyer call mine to sort everything out," I said, getting into the car. I rolled down the window and said, "Bye-bye, Lois," and drove away when she screamed, "Wait, Dave, wait a minute. I could let her walk me home and get my things. It wouldn't have hurt me at all, but I'm afraid at the time I was thinking like this. Fuck this bitch. If she didn't already have a lawyer, it would take her a day or two to find one, and since it was Thursday, I bet the earliest she could find one would be Monday, and then another day to arrange for her to be allowed into the house. By then, I would have had all of her things in trash bags and wouldn't have exercised reasonable care about it. If I'm lucky, she'll have to take it all to the dry cleaner or laundromat before she can use it. Was I a little angry towards Lois? No. When it came to Lois and me, everything was filled with sunshine and decorated with roses. I slept well that night. On Friday, I had another long lunch with Myra, and at the end of a rather busy period, Myra asked me if I had any plans for the weekend. When I said no, she asked, "Do you want to spend the weekend with me?" I would love to, but how would you hide it from your hubby? He's going fishing for the weekend. This morning, he packed his things in his car and will leave straight from work. From now until noon on Sunday, I am at your disposal. That's if you want me. Stupid girl. Let's see now. Dinner and dancing this evening, then go home and have sex. We wake up on Saturday morning and have sex most of the day. We'll have dinner and a dance on Saturday night, and then we'll go home and have sex. We wake up on Sunday and have sex until noon, then go to brunch. Does it sound something like this? Everything, except for the dance part. I suggest more sex and less dancing. I think we're sticking to your plan. We went back to work, and as I left, I told her I'd pick her up at 7. Get ready for the weekend, I told her, because I'm not going to bring you back until Sunday afternoon. When I returned home, I discovered that Lois had decided not to waste time finding a lawyer. When I went up to the bedroom to change clothes, I saw that the closet on Lois's side was empty. I looked around and saw that most of her other things were gone. I went to see if I could figure out how it got inside. It didn't take me long to find it. One of the living room windows overlooking the patio was broken. There was nothing I could do about it. Calling the police would be a waste of time since I wouldn't be able to prove that Lois did it. I really only got a modicum of satisfaction. There was some blood on some of the glass shards. Lois must have cut herself getting inside. I grabbed the yellow pages and found a glass company, called them, and made an appointment for the next day. I then decided to leave the mess until the morning, and with that decision made, I went upstairs, showered, and got dressed for my date with Myra. We had dinner, and then went dancing and drinking. We were in bed at 11, but didn't fall asleep until 3. And believe me when I say I was damn tired when Myra finished with me. I set my watch for 9 because the glass company said they would be there between 10 and 12. I didn't have to worry about the clock because Myra woke me up at 7:20 in the most miraculous way. I woke up and discovered how much pleasure she gave me. This led to sex in different positions, and then showers. Lathering and washing each other's backs, sides, and then the front of each other's bodies led to us having sex in the shower. More soaping and scrubbing brought us back to bed. By then, it was almost time for the glass master to appear, so breakfast was over and we decided to have an early lunch instead. While waiting for the glazier, I removed the broken glass and had just finished when the glazier arrived there at 10 minutes to 10. He finished everything at 10:40, and by 11, Myra and I were at Trikaki's for brunch. After Jared took our order, I asked Myra what she wanted to do after lunch. Lying around anywhere, making lazy love, embrace. I can do it, and that's exactly what we did. We were in a great mood, and by 5 o'clock we decided that we would order pizza and just carry on with what we had been doing most of the day. We decided not to have sex on full stomachs, so we cuddled on the sofa. We watched TV for an hour or two, and then in the middle of a program whose name I don't even remember, Myra began to caress me. This game could be played by 2, and I started playing with her breasts. And we had sex again. With Sunday morning came the realization that I would have to return her to my husband. With this realization, a thought came, and over pancakes in a village inn, I asked, "How much time do I have?" "What do you mean?" "How long will it be before you leave me?" "What makes you think that I would leave you?" "The way you said it when you told me you cheated on your hubby, I got the impression that you just did it occasionally and didn't date anyone for long periods of time." "Maybe, but it was never my choice. Usually the guy I dated would end up getting a little possessive and want me to leave Harold for him. The problem is that they weren't Harold's class. None of them could support me in the lifestyle I enjoyed as Harold's wife." I just couldn't imagine leaving a nice house in a nice area to live in a two-bedroom apartment and spend my time wondering if we could pay this month's bills. Besides, most of them weren't any better in bed than Harold. And then there was the fact that they were dirty bastards. At least that's how I looked at it. They had to be dirty bastards if they hit on a married woman, but I always wore my rings. I don't understand the logic here. You went out looking to get hit on, and you knew they knew you were married when you slept with them. True, but I wasn't looking for a replacement for Harold. I just wanted to get even. Just because I clung to them if they were halfway decent in bed didn't mean I really cared about them that much. Let's face it, if they came for me knowing I was married, do you think I would ever be able to trust them if I made our relationship permanent? So I'm just another bag of shit? Do not be silly. Of course, this is not true. I've been working for you for over 5 years now, and not once in all this time have you even flirted with me. Think about what brought us here, beloved. I almost gave you an engraved invitation. You told me straight out that you would never pursue a married woman, and you didn't. I put it out there for everyone to see, and you were smart enough not to refuse. If anything happens, it will be you leaving me. I can promise you that if I do this, it won't be soon. Do we have time to make love one more time before I have to take you home? She gave me a big smile, and we did just that. When I went to bed on Sunday night, I was one of the most sexually satisfied men in the state, and perhaps even the surrounding area. On Monday, as I drove to work, I thought about my relationship with Myra and realized that this could not continue, at least not the way it continued over the weekend. I sued Lois for adultery, and if she had hired a lawyer, one of the first things he would have done would have been to get her to get something out of me that she could stand up to. If she had failed to resist, I would have taken the lead in asset allocation. Getting caught with Myra would give Lois an argument, but there was no way I was going to go without sex for as long as it took to get a divorce. I went without it long enough while I was married to my bitch wife. When I got to work, I called Myra into my office and outlined the problem to her, then asked if she had any ideas. A couple, but I don't know if you can pull it off. Tell me, and let's see. You have these 3 uncomfortable chairs here in case clients come over. You need to put a comfortable sofa here for them to sit on. I can do it. Then you stay and often work late, so naturally I'll have to stay late to help you. Then, after we've put the new sofa to good use, you leave. I will wait 10 or 15 minutes to give those who may be watching you enough time to follow you without them seeing me leave. This should work. Another thing we could do is I'll leave for lunch before you and go to the hotel, get a room, and then call you and give you the room number. When you get to the hotel, take the elevator to the 2nd floor where all the meeting rooms are located, and then take the stairs to the floor where the room is located. However, we won't be able to do this very often. There is a limit to the number of conferences you can attend without raising eyebrows. What could stop them from coming up and making sure that I was at the conference? Before you go up the stairs, put a "Do Not Disturb" sign on one of the conference room doors. But it won't really matter. They will need to see us together. And as long as we come and go separately, we will be fine. I told Myra to plan a conference for the next day and then sent her back to work. I had a full day at work, so I didn't get around to ordering the sofa until 4. I didn't waste a time going through channels to get approval. I just ordered it and paid for it myself. At 5, I called Myra into my office and told her that she needed to tell her husband that she had to work late on Thursday. They will deliver the sofa around noon. How did you get Ahern and the accounting department to approve it so quickly? I didn't ask them. I bought it myself. She looked around, saw no one, and kissed me. Then she said, I was hoping I wouldn't have to wait until Thursday. Have you already forgotten about tomorrow's conference with the guys from Ajax? Damn it. How did this get out of my head? I was in a good mood the whole way home, and then the good mood faded when I pulled up to the house and saw Lois parked in the driveway. She was parked in the middle, so I couldn't walk past her to get into the garage. I parked so that she had room to reverse and drive away. When I got out of my car, she got out of hers, and then came up to me and said, We need to talk, Dave. Everything is getting out of control. I ignored her and walked past her to her car. I opened the door, reached inside, and grabbed her purse, which she had left on the seat. I turned it upside down and dumped the contents onto the seat. I took her wallet, took all the money out of it and counted it, and then put it in my pocket and threw the wallet on top of the rest of the trash on the seat. You still owe me $14 for the broken window, and we don't need to talk. I've already said everything I needed to tell you. Damn it, Dave. I love you and don't want a divorce. We can work things out. It doesn't have to end for us. Yes, that's right, Lois. There is no way in hell we can stay together, especially after I found out that you backstabbed me before we even got married. We're done, Lois. Finished. End. I hoped that you would listen to the voice of reason, but I guess deep down I knew that you wouldn't. If you are determined to get a divorce, I will have to fight you. I will not agree to adultery. I know what this condition is, and I will not agree to a 70-30 asset split when I get a lower number. I'm sorry you don't think you should be punished for what you did to me, but adultery still stands. You'll have to prove it, Dave, and you can't. It will be your word against mine, and I will deny it to hell and back. I will say that you are simply trying to defraud me out of my fair share of our assets. You might even be fined for it. You seem to forget that I have clear proof that you committed adultery with my idiot cousin. No, you don't understand, Dave. I grabbed this tape as I was leaving the house and then destroyed it. It will be your word against mine, and without any evidence, you will lose. Did you destroy it? Ralph will never forgive you. He wanted this tape so bad. He might even get so mad at you for ruining it that he just stops fucking you. Can you get it into your head that I don't give a damn about Ralph? Yes, I wanted what he had, but I don't need it. I need you. I shrugged and said, You still owe me $14 for the window. I walked away from her and entered the house. This bitch didn't give up that easily. She banged on the door and rang the bell for a good 10 minutes before she finally left. Watching her walk back up the driveway, I smiled. Apparently she destroyed the tape without looking at it to make sure she had the right one. Was she ever in for a surprise? I wanted her to hire a lawyer and get a divorce. I wanted her to go into debt, spend $1,000 or more on lawyers, only to find out that I still had the tape and that she had wasted her money. I slept soundly that night. My conference on Tuesday with the Ajax people went well, and I was in a pretty good mood when I got home from work. Wednesday wasn't too bad either, as Myra wanted to have quick sex on my desk before closing time. After a quick check to make sure everyone else had left, I thanked the lady, and when we were done, I reminded her that she would have to work late on Thursday. On the way home, I decided to stop at my favorite drinking spot, which was the Runway Lounge. I had completely forgotten that Wednesday night was an open house, and when I got there, I had a hard time finding a seat. Finally, a seat became available at the bar, and I took it. I got there just as Bobby Denton handed the microphone to the trailer mechanic who worked at Triple T's sales and service department in Franktown. An 8-year-old girl approached her grandfather, who was working in the yard, and asked him, "Grandfather, what is sex together?" Grandpa was surprised that she would ask such a question, but then he decided that if she was old enough to ask the question, then she was old enough to get a straight answer. Gathering his courage so as not to miss anything, he began to tell the young girl all about human reproduction, the joys and responsibilities of sexual intercourse. When he finished explaining, the little girl looked at him with her mouth open and her eyes wide in amazement. Seeing the expression on her face, Grandfather asked her, "Why did you ask this question, honey?" "Grandma told me to tell you that dinner will be ready in a couple of seconds." The crowd burst into laughter, and then he said, "There was one guy there, and he was pretty smart. He had degrees in both electrical and mechanical engineering, and one day while driving home, he heard an advertisement on his car radio that he decided was an outright lie. He thought about it, and returning home, sat down in his den and sketched out plans for a lie detector robot. When he was satisfied with his plan, he went down to his basement workshop and began to build it. It took him 6 weeks, and when everything was ready, he was ready to test it. It just happened that the robot was with him in the living room when his 14-year-old son returned home 2 hours late. The man asked his son why he was so late. His son said he was playing cards with his buddies and lost track of time. The robot rolled up to the boy and slapped him in the face. The man said, "Now tell me the truth. Why are you late?" The boy said, "It was not a trifle. We were just watching some adult movie that Johnny's dad had." The man shook his head and said, "When I was your age, we didn't watch this." And the robot slapped him in the face. His wife laughed and said, "He looks like you, George. He is definitely your son." And the robot slapped her in the face. This caused another roar from the crowd. There was a break in the show, so I finished my beer and went home. The next day, two good things happened. My lawyer called first to tell me that he had been contacted by the lawyer representing Lois and was told that she was going to fight the divorce. This made me smile. Secondly, my black leather sofa was delivered. The next 2 weeks flew by. Myra and I did this 3 or 4 times a week, mostly on the couch, after hours. But we went to the conference room 3 times because, let's face it, just like a couch was better than a desk, a bed was better than a couch. Also, during this period, Lois called me almost daily saying that she needed me and that I just couldn't win, so why not just accept things as they were in the past, and the best thing to do is forget about it and move on with our life together. I could have stopped the calls by buying a new cell phone with a different number and changing my home phone number, but I took some perverse pleasure in telling her that she was wasting her time. All this time she knew that she had no idea what was about to happen to her. Meanwhile, Ellsworth and the lawyer Lois hired spent time sorting things out. I was hoping Lois's lawyer was paid hourly and would pay his bill. I agreed with Ellsworth on a flat fee, so I didn't care how long it took. Ellsworth knew about the tape and was in fact in his possession, but he never told Lois's lawyer about its existence. They bargained with another lawyer, arguing that Lois would stop fighting for the divorce if I changed the grounds from adultery to irreconcilable differences and agreed to an equal division of property. To give Lois some hope, I told Ellsworth that he could lower the rate from 70-30 to 65-35, knowing full well that she would not accept it. Ellsworth told me that he would have to tell the opposition about the existence of the tape before going before a judge. He said the judge would be angry, extremely angry, if we had not made every effort to come to an agreement before going before him. I told Ellsworth to use his best judgment. What the hell? That was what I paid him for, right? Lois actually put someone on me, or at least I was pretty sure she did. Suddenly I saw a guy nearby whom I had never seen before. I never noticed him actually looking at me, but he seemed to be there no matter where I was. Maybe it was me being paranoid, but on the other hand, maybe not. Another week passed and Ellsworth called me. Lois and her lawyer wanted to meet. I told him to arrange everything and let me know when. He called me back and said that on Friday at 10 in the morning. I was there at 9:30 and discussed everything with Bert. We decided to turn on the recording at the meeting, but I wanted to have Lois's brain one last time. The meeting started with the usual nonsense. Lois denied the affair and said I was being unreasonable. Then I said, "You keep forgetting that I have a recording that you and my stupid cousin made." "No, that's not true. You have nothing to prove your claim and you know it. I'll tell you what I'll do, Lois. If you sign the papers right now, I'll agree to a 60-40 split. This offer is valid for the next 2 minutes. If you don't sign, I think the judge will be the one to set the separation." "I don't accept this, Dave. You have no proof." "Of course there is, Lois. I have a tape of you having sex with Ralph." And then Lois did what I was hoping for. She got angry and let her mouth leave her. "Damn it, Dave. I already told you I destroyed the damn tape." "Oh, so you're admitting that you committed adultery and then destroyed the evidence?" Her eyes widened as she realized what she had just said. "No, I did not mean it. It doesn't matter, Lois. I offered to cut you some slack, but you, as usual, stubbornly rejected my offer. We'll just have to let the judge make the decision." Lois's lawyer then spoke. "If you really have evidence, it would be better to make it public now." I nodded to Ellsworth, and as he walked over to press play on the VCR on the edge of the table, I said, "Last chance, Lois. I'm betting it's 60-40. But as soon as he presses play, the offer will be withdrawn, and we'll go to court." Fuck you, Dave. You have nothing that you can use. Bert pressed play, and I stood up and said, "See you in court, Lois," and left the room. I had not yet left the building when my cell phone rang. It was Bert. "They want to make a deal." No thanks. I gave her a chance and she didn't take it. All this did was increase the number of phone calls I received from Lois. I had turned off my home phone and Myra knew I wasn't allowed to forward calls from Lois, so the only way Lois could reach me was through my cell phone. I saved the cell phone and number just to tease Lois. I was pleased to see how many calls I received from her that I never answered. When it came to my sex life, Myra was giving me almost more than I could handle, but I wasn't going to complain. 3 days after meeting with Lois and the lawyers, Myra said, "We have a problem. A very big problem." Oh shit. I thought her hubby found out about us. "How bad is it?" I asked. "Pretty bad. Harold must fly back to Ohio to settle some matters related to his parents' inheritance. He'll be gone for a week." "So what's the problem? How are we going to spend the week together?" I thought for a minute and then said, "Easy. You leave work half an hour before me and go to my house. You'll park a block away and then go into the house and make sure all the curtains and blinds are drawn tightly. Then, when I come home, we have sex. In the morning, I go to work, and if they are watching me, it will pull them along with me. You wait 10 or 15 minutes for me to clean up, and then you leave and come to work. We'll just repeat this until the weekend, and then come up with another plan." "How about this weekend plan? I do the same thing I do all week, except on Friday when you get home. We just never leave the house for the whole weekend. Do you think you can handle 2.5 days with me?" "What I'm not sure about, honey, is that I can survive 2.5 days with you." "We won't know until we try." And that's exactly what we did. And I did manage to get through the weekend, but the weekend, as good as it was, left me feeling a little down when it was all over, and Myra went home to be there to greet hubby when he got home. I'm too used to Myra. Sex aside, she was good company, and I got along great with her, but I knew myself well enough to know that once my divorce was final, I would be looking for a replacement for Lois. I liked being married. I was going to want a full-time relationship. I wanted to be able to fall asleep at night cuddled up with a woman who would be there when I woke up in the morning. I could totally see myself doing this with Myra, but Myra never showed any signs that she would ever leave Harold. I always had the feeling that she was happy with him and was willing to stay with him as long as she was able to repay him in kind. I remembered the list she had shown me that had been the impetus for our romance, and I mentally reviewed it. There were 3 whom I would have loved to have, but I could not consider any of them as a suitable wife. 2 of them smoked, but I didn't. And living with my parents, I knew I couldn't live with someone who smoked. Both my parents smoked 2 packs a day, and the house always smelled like a wet ashtray. The stench was everywhere, on clothes, furniture, curtains, and the list could go on and on. The only non-smoker was Liz from accounting, and she was also the sexiest of the 3, but I thought she was too young for me, and the age difference meant we were unlikely to have much in common outside of work. One day I walked into her office to check on a line item on one of my expense reports, and she was listening to rap music, and I can't stand that. It might have been fun to have sex with Liz for a while, but I couldn't imagine that we would be able to do it for the long haul. These were exactly the thoughts that plagued me as I drove to work on Monday. One day at work, I was too busy to spend time thinking about personal problems. I was so busy that I had to say no when Myra popped her head into the office and asked me if we would be staying for lunch. Shortly before the end of the day, Bert Ellsworth called me. He said Lois was desperate to meet. "I know for you it's all about convincing her, but I think it would be reasonable to offer her 60-40 to get her to sign the contract now. I know that in most cases, adultery does play a big role in the injured party getting a larger share of the property, but 2 of the 7 judges who hear divorce cases are women, and they tend to make a 50-50 decision regardless of the reason. And we just might not be lucky enough to attract one of them. I think it would be in your best interest to settle this matter." I thought about it for maybe 30 seconds, and then told him to offer her 65-35 and see if she would take it. When it was time to leave, Myra entered the office and said, I didn't have time to have lunch, so can I at least sit on the couch for a while? She could and did it. The next morning at 10 o'clock, Ellsworth called and said that Lois had accepted the 6535 offer. He said that she would come on Wednesday at 5 to sign the papers and asked for a short meeting with me. I didn't see any benefit in it, other than it gave me another chance to growl at her. But I wanted to get it all over with so I wouldn't have to sneak out on Myra anymore. I told Bert I'd be there at 2 and give her the meeting she wanted. We entered the conference room. I sat down and waited for her to give her speech. She saw that I wasn't going to say anything, so she took a deep breath and said, "I don't need this, Ralph. I know you don't believe it, but I really love you. Is there anything at all that we could work out and stay together? This is not a prayer, Lois. Not after finding out how long you've been doing this. I'll be honest with you here. If you were having a short fling with someone, I might, just might, let it slide. Say maybe you had a few big manhoods before we got married, and then you were a faithful wife for years until you somehow discovered someone had a big one between their legs and you remembered, as nice as it was, and started a short relationship with him. I might have been able to handle it. But an ongoing affair before we even said yes? No way in the world, Lois. There's no way we can get past this. The guy you say you barely like gets sex from you all the time, and the man you say you love goes 3 weeks to 2 months without you. This won't wash Lois clean. It just won't wash off. This is all? Is that all you can say? Please, Dave, please give us a chance. I can't do this, Lois. I will never trust you again or live like this. I stood up and headed towards the door. I turned and said, "You're a beautiful woman, Lois, so I doubt you'll be alone for long. When you do end up sleeping with someone, I can only hope that they fuck you as hard as you fucked me." I left the room and headed towards the landing strip. I sat down at the bar and Karen came over, put a beer in front of me and said, "Where have you been hiding, Hansomi? I was going through a divorce and didn't feel all that social. I thought I'd come in, have a couple of beers and relax. Divorce, Does this mean I might be able to put you under my spell? I thought we had already discussed everything. I've been flirting with you for years, and you always told me how great you had with your boyfriend. Ha. Everything was great, but only because I thought he was something he wasn't." Before she could continue, another customer caught her attention, and I watched her beautiful firm ass as she walked towards him. She was busy most of the time. I was drinking 2 beers, so I didn't get a chance to talk to her too much. I'd had enough, so I waved for Karen to bring my bill. She took my money, and when she returned with my change, she smiled at me and said, "When the divorce is over, keep me in mind, okay? I can do it. Take care of yourself." And I headed towards the house in a damn good mood. Is Karen interested in me? Who would have thought of this? As for me, once Lois signs the papers, it's done. And even though I have to wait for the final decision, I can move on with my life. For me, this meant freedom from worrying about being watched. Myra and I could stop hiding. Around 10, Myra came into the office and asked if we would have a long lunch, and I told her yes. "I'll leave around 11:20 and rent a room," she said. "This is no longer necessary. Lois signed the papers yesterday, so we don't have to try to avoid something that probably never would have happened anyway." We went to the Marriott at 11:30 and were alone in the elevator, going down to the lobby, when Myra grabbed my hand, lifted my skirt, and put my hand on her naked body. "I just want you to know how much I can't wait for this." We quickly changed lines and then ran out of the building. When the door to room 403 closed behind us, we pounced on each other like wild animals on fallen prey. No foreplay, just straight to sex. Several more poses followed. While we were getting dressed, Myra asked, "What now?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, what now that you're free? Are we done being hookup buddies?" This took me by surprise, but it didn't take me long to find the answer to this question. As long as you want me, honey, I'll be there. But eventually, I'll want to find myself a wife. I liked being married. What would you look for in a wife? She would have to be attractive enough, like sex, strong enough to put up with me, and be a pretty good cook. I can cook. I looked at her for a second or two until it dawned on me what she was really saying, and then I said, "If you are applying for this position, I will move your application to the top of the pile. However, there is one small requirement. I will not participate in the commission of bigamy." She looked at me with a confused expression on her face, and then it dawned on her. She smiled broadly at me and said, "Don't worry, darling. He doesn't know it yet, but Harold is history." Then a thought struck me, and Myra saw my expression change and asked, "What's the matter, baby? What's happened? We just got to the point where we don't have to hide anything from Lois, but now we have to hide things from Harold while you're going through divorce proceedings." I could be wrong, but I don't think this should happen. I will give him the choice between adultery or irreconcilable differences. I have more than enough evidence to prove adultery. And if I go that route and say, I'm going to tell the world about it, he might quickly come to terms with irreconcilable differences. Harold is a social climber where he works, and he has his eye on the position of vice president. The CEO is a fanatical born-again Christian, as are a couple of the board members. I don't believe Harold's prospects would be so bright if I started the rumor about his adultery. This might mean a motel room for me for a week or two, but we know our way around that, right? Myra's plan worked pretty much as she expected, and she wasted no time in putting it into action. She called Ellsworth and made an appointment for Friday. She asked Bert to draw up 2 sets of papers, one for adultery, the other for irreconcilable differences. On Saturday at 11:45, shortly before the bank closed, she withdrew half the checking account, all the savings, and 4 of the 6 cards from their safe deposit box. She drove home, packed, and moved her belongings into the car, and by 3 o'clock, she was moved to a motel room. She went home, made dinner, opened a bottle of wine, and as she and Harold ate dinner, she told him that she knew about his affairs, had received private investigator reports on 3 of them, and that she had had enough. She is going to divorce him. She told him what she had done with the money and that she would sign over her share of the house to him. She considered this more than fair, since her share of the equity in the house was greater than what she had borrowed from the bank. She gave him the divorce papers and told him what his options were. She said he had until 10 o'clock on Monday morning to tell her which way he wanted her to go, and then she got up and left the house, smiling because she had left Harold the dirty dishes. She was not surprised when Harold called her on her cell phone and said that he would rather take the path of irreconcilable differences. The 2 of them met in Bert's office on Wednesday, and Harold signed on the dotted line. Myra decided to stay at the motel for the weekend to give the dust time to settle, and then I moved her in with me, and we were going to live together until our divorces were final, and then we would get married. Once this happens, we will have to face another problem. Myra was damn good at her job and didn't want to quit. The problem was that the company we worked for had a policy that family members were not allowed to work together. We could both still work for the company, but one of us would have to transfer. The problem with this was that the closest company facility we could move to was 90 kilometers away, and it just wouldn't work for us. We decided to lie. We just wouldn't tell the company we were married. Myra would not have changed her name and would have kept her company's health insurance. We would do this until we got caught, and then Myra would quit and find another job, if she wanted. She didn't really need to work since I was getting a very good salary for what I did. She checked out of the motel on Sunday, and by 3 o'clock in the afternoon, she was living with me. And the next 2 months passed quickly, without any problems. I started to relax and let my guard down. Big mistake. Lois called once or twice a week, and I usually answered the call first for the pleasure of turning her off. I should have known she wouldn't stop pestering me. It was Wednesday evening, and Myra and I were on the runway enjoying a glass or 2 of punch. We went there from time to time because it was always my favorite place to drink. But the main reason we were there that particular night was because one of the girls from accounting was getting up and trying to perform. We were there for encouragement and moral support. Shelley was fine, but our opinion was that she should stay at her regular job instead of trying to go into show business. She started with, "A man was sitting, reading his daily newspaper when his wife came up and hit him on the head with a frying pan." "What was it for?" asked the man. The wife replied, "It was because of a piece of paper I found in your pants pocket with Jenny's name on it." The husband said, "When I was at the races last week, Jenny was the name of the horse I bet on." The wife apologized and continued her homework. 3 days later, a man was watching TV when his wife walked up and hit him over the head with an even larger frying pan, knocking him unconscious. When the man regained consciousness, he asked his wife why she hit him again. "Your horse called," the wife answered. After polite laughter from the crowd, she continued, "An elderly man and woman had been married for many, many years, although they hated each other. Whenever there was a skirmish, screams could be heard deep into the night. The old man shouted, 'When I die, I will dig my way out of the grave and come back and haunt you for the rest of my life.' The neighbors were afraid of him. They believed that he practiced black magic because of the many strange incidents that happened in the neighborhood. The old man liked that they were afraid of him. To everyone's relief, the old man died of a heart attack when he was 85. At his funeral, there was a closed coffin, and after the funeral, his wife went to a local bar and started having fun as if there was no tomorrow. Her neighbor, concerned for her safety, asked, 'Aren't you afraid that he might actually dig his way out of his grave and come back to haunt you?' The wife put down her glass and laughed. 'Let him dig. I buried the old fart upside down, and I know him well enough to know he won't stop and ask for directions.' Like I said, fine, but she needed to keep her day job. Bobby Denton was just introducing the next hopeful when I felt something wet splash on me and heard, 'Keep your fucking hands off my man, you fucking bitch.' I turned around and saw Lois come up behind us and pour the drink on Myra's head. Before I could get up and do anything, Myra threw her drink in Lois's face, and as Lois's hands flew up to her face, Myra grabbed the bottle by the long neck, stood up, and struck Lois in cold blood. Lois fell to the floor, and I grabbed Myra and pushed her out the door. I had some rags in the trunk of my car, and I took them out and was drying Myra and myself when Lois came out the door. She was unsteady on her feet from being hit in the head with a beer bottle and was being helped by none other than my idiot cousin Ralph. I dropped the rag I was holding in my hand and shouted, 'You rotten son of a bitch!' and rushed at him. He let go of Lois, who fell to the ground, and then began to run. I chased him for 3 blocks before I gave up and returned to the parking lot. When I got there, Myra was holding Lois against the fender of the car, and when I walked up to them, I saw Lois crying and Myra screaming in her face. 'Get that into your stupid head, you stupid cow. I didn't steal it from you. You threw it away, and I was lucky enough to catch it.' As I approached them, Myra stepped back from Lois and said, 'Let's get out of here. Get in the car. I need to go inside and straighten things out with Joe.' I went inside and found Joe and asked if there was any damage that I needed to take care of, to which he replied, 'No,' and laughed, saying, 'Next time, do it during intermission so that visitors have something to watch when no one is at the microphone.' When I returned outside, I found Lois waiting for me right outside the door. A quick glance showed Myra waiting in the car. Lois stood in front of me and said, 'Please, Dave, give up the divorce. I'm dying, baby. I need you. I love you, and I know we can work things out.' You must be the dumbest woman on the planet, Lois, standing here and declaring your love for me, while your date today is the reason for divorce. Not only that, but you were stupid enough to draw attention to the fact that you were here together. You need to leave it at that, Lois. The only feelings I have for you are hatred and disgust. Leave me alone." I walked around her, got into the car, and drove away. Both divorces became final, and I proposed to Myra. I was surprised when she said, "Ask me again in a year, baby. By then, we will have lived together long enough to know that we are a good fit for each other." I gave her a year and then asked again, and she said yes. We had both already had a big wedding and didn't want to go through that again, so we settled on a civil ceremony and magistrate. Lois married Ralph, and their marriage did not last 2 years. It appears that Ralph shared his large space with several other women, and one of them gave him a venereal disease, which he in turn passed on to Lois. Obviously, cheating on me was acceptable, but cheating on her was a completely different matter, and she was having none of it. 6 years after my wedding to Myra, Ralph was stupid enough to attend a wedding that I attended. I have fulfilled my long-standing promise to him. It may be a while before I'm invited to a family event again. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one.